listening to the No Labels, No Limits podcast with best-selling author Sarah Box, where you get the inside scoop on the steps action takers and decision makers take to align their purpose to their principles and achieve their goals in business and life. We focus on the mantra, no labels, no limits, no excuses. And now, without further ado, please welcome your commanding coach with plenty of chutzpah and heart, Sarah Box.
Hi, this is Sarah, your host of the No Labels, No Limits podcast, a podcast all about shedding our limiting labels and beliefs so that we can actually be true to ourselves and who we were uniquely created to be. We're going to learn a lot about that from today's guest, Naketa Ren Thigpen. Let me tell you a little bit about her. I'm going to ask her to go into a lot more detail, but I'm going to give you the bio level pieces. So Naketa is known as the #1 balance and relationship advisor in the world, activating power couples and potent humans, that's us, who are ready to recalibrate and own their right to be intentionally selfish and to amplify relationship intimacy as they grow to live into that space fully. After a successful career helping families push through trials caused by trauma, lost confidence, communication challenges, all impacting intimacy within relationships, Naketa architected her core professional skill set as a psychotherapist, trauma specialist, sexologist, and relationship expert with strategically infused tenets of metaphysics and coaching, creating ripples inside the personal development industry. So I want to pause and reread part of that because that's a very unique blend of skills, but also of her own interests and seeking. I'm going to say seeking. So strategically infused tenets of metaphysics and coaching. Just think on that for a little bit. She's a reformed perfectionist who used to be addicted to stress. Oh, baby, can I relate? And as we start our conversation today, Naketa suggests that if there's anything we as listeners can relate to in any way to what she shares, she wants us to recognize it, to release it, and just do that simple effort so that it doesn't stifle our growth in any of the areas of work, life, and love. So that's her ask of us before we even get started. So today I'm going to ask her a bit about her journey, how she ended up where she is today, and the work she does through Big Pro Balance and Relationship Management Institute, how we can make space for what it is that we want when we feel we're at capacity or we feel that when doing so is inherently selfish, and then what expired expectations are and what wounds they leave. And then I do want to know what it takes very specifically to create work, life, and love balance, because that's one of the questions I am asked so much. And I never feel like I have the right or the best answer. I have the only answer I have in the moment, right? But I want to know from an expert what that answer is. So with that, let's quit dilly-dallying around and welcome our guest, Naketa Ren Thigpen. Hey, Naketa.
Oh my goodness, Sarah. Hello. Thank you so much for having me.
Well, thanks for taking time. We're actually recording this on Martin Luther King holiday. So I was super excited that it worked for your schedule, my schedule. And since today is a day of, just the growth that happens through one person showing up wholly and authentically and bravely. I know it wasn't a lone person doing it, that there were others who supported and came behind, but it seems like a perfect day to be having this conversation.
Absolutely.
Okay, I want to ask you a little left question to start, though.
Okay.
What was the cost to you personally, relationally, professionally for being a perfectionist? And then I'm going to back in and ask you about your beginnings.
That is a loaded question. The cost of being a perfectionist, it almost cost me my sanity. I would have previously identified as a type A personality, if you're thinking of a kind of a traditional type A, type B person. I don't think that that was truly who I ever was, but it was who I felt like I needed to be. The mask that we tend to wear as ambitious women, always, always, always proving. And we typically do that by overgiving, but it has to be in a space of excellence, right? And I do believe in excellence, by the way. So that's not a cheeky stab at excellence, but I think we often tie excellence with perfectionism. And I think you can separate them out. You can be your excellent best without having to make something so perfect and being so rigid about it that you can't breathe any of your true self in it. So for me personally, in addition to years of therapy and my own trauma healing, coaching, advising, mentors that I had to seek out and really help me pull those pieces of me that had gotten separated under a lost identity of a little 9-year-old girl that was constantly just trying to save her mother. Because that's where it really started for me. My mom walked out when I was 9 years old. She was and is drug addicted. And she made a decision at that time to leave me because she didn't want to go to rehab, because that was the choice that my grandmother gave her, like go to rehab or you leave and we keep her here. And she knew the house that I was being kept in, which was the house she grew up in, I would be consistently and continually abused by her abuser, who she was leaving me with. So there was a lot of layers to that, and me literally trying to fix the world through this proverbial version of fixing my mom. But I have to be excellent. I have to be perfect. I have to do it right, or else she won't come back to me. And even I moved in with her when I was 12 because I was very rebellious, as you can imagine, which is a true core personality part of myself, by the way. It was just coming out in, negative behaviors as 10, 11, 12 years old. And I moved in with her because it was convenient for her, because she was pregnant with my then youngest. I'm the oldest of 5 brothers. And I was her babysitter, basically. Like I didn't know that going in. I thought, oh, my mother wants me now. And it was, no, now you're going to be a caregiver. You're going to be parentified. So I was always constantly in that churn of needing to prove myself. And the best way that I knew how to do that was by giving more of me than I would ever get back, because I didn't expect anything back. I didn't think I was worthy of getting anything back. I didn't think I was enough for someone to want to choose me, right, to get anything back. And those schemas, those narratives, those scripts followed me throughout my early career. My first career as a clinician, as a trauma specialist. Oh my goodness, I was so fantastic at it. I was so good. And I loved my work because it's all about giving. I worked in hospital systems and crisis centers and advocacy centers and with stakeholders, the mayor, the city of Philadelphia, all of it. You are nonstop 12, 16, 18-hour days. It was the perfect place for me to hide. It was not the best place for me to heal. And as intelligent as I am and all the degrees and certifications and, not to dismiss the very hard work that I put into it, it all just became more ways for me to calcify over my purpose, for me to hide in the chaos of being busy, which is why I tell people there's a lot of B words that you shouldn't ascribe to, but the B word for busy is definitely one of them, because I had very little boundary with myself. It wasn't about other people. It was me. Other people coming in as change agents to bring me lessons in my life were extremely helpful once I was the Monday morning quarterbacking of that Sunday night game, right? Like in the moment, I felt the betrayal. In the moment, I felt the pain of not being able to help someone see their potential and help them be a better friend, be a better lover, be a better human, be a better mother, right? Because ultimately, that's what it came back for me. And my father had a part in this too. Don't get me wrong. It wasn't just all her. He's also recovering from substance abuse and had been in and out of jail since I was 15 and all the other things, and had started a new family and all the other things in between. But he wasn't the one that imprinted on me as deeply, because I was tethered to my mother in such a deep way that most of us, I think, listening to this would understand that you have powerful relationships with both of your parents, but daughters and their mothers have something very unique and very special that can be very damaging if you're not careful. And all of that had to get unwound because God knows, Sarah, it showed up in my marriage. It showed up in my parenting. It showed up. I didn't know that I was going to be an entrepreneur, but when I became an entrepreneur in 2011, almost 12 years ago, May will be our official 12th year at the time of this recording, I had no idea that I had so many insecurities. I had no idea that I had so many confidence issues. I had no idea that there was so much more growth left for me. And not just in the obvious, like, hey, if you're living on this earth, all of us can do a little bit of growing. Not that way, but I was so immature in my mindset but I didn't understand it because I got validated by the world. I was constantly patted on the back. Before I became an entrepreneur, I always had 3 to 5 jobs. 5 was my sweet spot. While in grad school, while in post-grad school, while being a wife, while being a mama. Again, the addiction to stress, right? All of those things allowed me to not see the immaturity because I was intelligent. And a lot of us walk around hiding behind what the world validates us by because that was the expectation. Prove yourself as smart, prove yourself as strong, prove yourself as sexy. If that's your adage, if that's your thing, as long as you can cover yourself with one of those things, you're good to go. But all the stuff underneath was really tethered and tangled in so many wounds is the best way that I can say. I'm trying not to overuse the word trauma because that's my default as a trauma specialist, but there were so many wounds that I didn't even know were infected because I was literally hiding the whole time.
So what happened? I mean, was there a point at which you went, okay, this is not working, whatever this is, and I'm smart, but I can't figure this out on my own. The brain that got me here is not the brain that's going to get me out of here.
Come on, that's a t-shirt right there. On so many levels.
Well, only because you've learned it. I learned it, right? It's like, hey, if you knew how to get out of this, you'd be out of this.
Yeah, exactly. I would say yes, that hard yes, we could put a period on the end of it, but that yes wasn't a one yes. There was a lot of micro shift yes that helped me move my paradigm in a different direction. The very first yes that I could say when I was like, okay, something ain't right. you need to get someone smarter than you, different than you in this particular area to help you. I was in my early 20s. My youngest now is 22, and she was an infant. And at the time I was doing trauma work, case manager specialist, where I had to go to people's homes to help them with different challenges they were having if they had psychosis and they couldn't leave the home, and make sure they were dotting I's and crossing T's so they can continue to receive the benefits that they were getting from the state or the city, for both. And a woman had a psychotic break while I was in her house. And she saw me she was hallucinating and saw me as a major threat. So she had locked me in, barricaded the doors, and started trying to throw knives at me. Like, it was a very serious situation. And we always carried 2 phones as a case manager. She got the one phone away from me and broke it. But I luckily had my other phone, so I was able to tap into the district office so they could hear everything and they could patch in police. But my office is in Center City. I'm all the way in the Northeast. For anyone unfamiliar with Philadelphia, that is not 10 minutes around the corner. So we had to, wait for that. In the meantime, I'm trying to de-escalate her, keep her calm. There's one side of me, the Naketa, the clinical social worker, right? Trying to keep her calm, trying to do my best to not escalate the situation. Then there's Kia from South Philly, who is being threatened with physical bodily harm, who grew up fighting her entire life, physically, mentally, emotionally, verbally, inside her own home, let alone outside of her home. Kia is looking at this woman like, you got 1 millimeter step to come closer to me, and you don't have to worry about having a psychotic break, right? Like, I'm really wrestling here, just being fully transparent.
I will end this.
Right, absolutely. But this will be an ended discussion. And I'm having like visuals, of my toddler, who's my son, who's 26 now, and my infant, who's my daughter, who's 22 now, and my husband. And I'm seeing like, you cannot go to jail, because that was the track that my life, before I made a decision as a very young person to not do what my parents were doing, that is what I was predestined to do, considering the sexual abuse, the physical abuse, the violence, like all the things. And my goal, I know a lot of people growing up are like, I want to be a fireman, I want to be a whatever. I had, all these altruistic dreams of being a pediatrician and a psychologist, right? Like I had like that thought, but I never saw it as a visual. My main visual was, don't go to jail. That was my visual. And in that moment, I saw me going to jail.
Oh,
that was my first one. Of course, everything worked out. Police were able to get in and nobody got hurt. I had a disassociative moment where I literally saw what I would do to put me in jail, but it didn't physically actually happen. But I definitely disassociated from my body. And my supervisor, Jeanette Harrigan Braxton, I still remember her to this day. And we're talking 20 some years ago. She was the best supervisor I've ever had in my entire life. She listened. She had high EQ, and she was culturally appropriate and understood that this wasn't a matter of trying to train me. This was a matter of listening fully to me and my circumstances without allowing it to be an excuse for any behavior or non-behavior in any direction. And she insisted that I go to EAP, employee assistant professional, to get help. And I insisted that I was fine and I was going to go back to work the next day, right? Like, normal. I'm in grad school at the time for my master's, like all the things. And I was like, no, come back. She was like, and you will not come back to work. You will make the call, or I will make it for you. And you will make sure everything, I's are dotted, T's are crossed. I still love her for that day, because when I did do 3 Little Bears, Sarah, I won't lie and be like, the first EAP counselor was magical. Because remember, you're dealing with someone who's aware of their brilliance and their knowledge. So every counselor that I had, I was like, well, you ain't asked me this. Why you didn't ask me that? You didn't ask me this in this order, right? Like I'm trying to be too smart for the person who's helping me. And finally, I surrendered when I met my match. A German woman, she's since past transition, who was not charmed by me at all. She was, her between her accent, the cultural differences, the diversity of it was perfectly beautiful for what I needed. And I was with that woman for 3 years. I went to make sure that incident wouldn't show up in my work. But what she helped me open up was all the stuff I had never before that day dealt with. I had never dealt with the sexual abuse. I had never dealt with acknowledging that my grandmother laid on a couch while her husband took me to her bedroom at 7 years old. I had never dealt with any of those things ever until that woman, every single week for 3 years, with money I did not have, money that I would do extra part-time for, my husband do extra just to make sure that I could get the support. That was the first small shift. I would love to say that was enough for all the stuff, but the damage was deep, Sarah. It was tangled and really hidden and, covered up and smothered and packaged with cherries on top. So no one would know what was in it, because I always grew up smiling. And, I was the cute little girl that's always so, I hate this word, but I'm going to use it because that's what I was called. She's so nice. She's so nice. Meanwhile, I was in so much pain and I was so superficial, right? Like trying to be nice in moments when I could care less, but I just needed to be nice because I have to be smiling so I can help the world, because no one needs to deal with mine. No one cares to deal with my pain or my issues or how I'm really doing that day. And that was the first shift that really kind of, I'll use the current phrase, habit stacked. From there, it broke through enough that I could listen for other ways to improve and see where I wasn't showing up fully. My youngest was about almost 8 years old when she called me to the table in a really big way. She told me, we were sitting at the table having dinner, my husband, my son, my daughter, myself. And she said, "You are so awesome for everyone else but me." Now, as a Black mama, I said, "Who are you talking to?" Right? Like that's my first response, being very clear. And she was like, I'm just saying, Mom, because we did teach our kids to advocate for themselves. And in that conversation, she shared that, yes, you take me to all the things, you sign me up for all the things, you're there, but you're not there. You're not with the other moms looking at us through the glass for practice and dance class or soccer or whatever. Your head is always in your notebook. You're always writing your, back in the day, tablets. You're always in that Palm Pilot. You're always doing that. When we're in the car for 45 minutes for school, you're always on your phone. You're always having a conversation. Back then it was pages. You're returning a page. And she was right. I really worked hard to keep my kids with a full schedule of opportunities that I didn't have access to when all they really wanted was me. And she was the first to call me on it, which propelled me to the next shift, and so on and so forth.
What a brave young woman. Mm-hmm. Because think about it. Even though you taught them to advocate for themselves, knowing how and showing up and doing it are different.
Yes.
So props to you. And man, what a great kid.
Yeah, you couldn't have told me that in the moment. Like, I'm grateful, man.
Well, that's the beauty of the moment, especially when we've got some self-awareness. Yeah. We hear it in our head. And if we're quick enough, we shut our mouth. It's like, wait a minute. That's an overreaction to a simple comment.
Yes. Yes.
What's really happening here?
So true. I had a little bit of both in that moment, as my husband and my son did the look down at the pasta. We're not part of this conversation. Like, well,
can I get you anything else, Dad?
Pretty much.
Yeah, I know. We feel those uncomfortable moments and just hope the storms pass quickly when we're not involved. So, okay. Now, you said a lot there about like doing the extra work, your husband making sure you had the resources so you could do this, to commit to taking care of yourself, right?
Yeah.
Now, I don't know, especially at that time with all the other things you were juggling, your kids, your degrees. That to me also sounds like it took a lot of courage to say, I'm worth it.
Yeah.
Right. So would you say that was one of your profound moments of selfishness when you declared you were going to do that? Or were you even thinking of it in that way?
I wasn't. Honestly, I didn't start thinking of the framing of being intentionally selfish is how I kind of section it away from what the world sees as selfishness. I didn't really see it until I literally started writing my memoir, my survivor memoir, which is Selfish: Permission to Pause, Live, Love, and Laugh Your Way to Joy. And when I started writing, which was 8.5 years before it was released in April of 2020, officially April of 2020, when I started it, I realized there was so much more pain that was buried under there, that with a phenomenal therapist, and at this point, a couple of coaches and some spiritual counselors and pastors and bishops and other people that had really poured into me in different ways or received me in different ways, there was still a lot that was underneath. Because as you know how it is when you go to the dentist to get a cleaning, they also, if they're doing a full scan, are like, you need a crown, something with the root canal, something with the, everything's overall good, but there's some potential issues that we can see coming up. We want to get ahead of this. And that's kind of how it was for me, at least, because of all the layers of really deep buried trauma and, micro traumas that were on top of all of those things that were occurring because of, inactions and actions that I was taking as an adult who was responsible for her life at that point. It was helping to do one thing, but it was uncovering other things that would kind of seep out in different ways when I was challenged.
Because they weren't tamped down anymore.
Because they weren't, exactly. They were like loosened up almost.
Yep.
When I reflected and looked at when was the first time I was truly selfish, it was the time that being intentionally selfish actually saved my life. I was 15 years old and raising my brother in my mother's home with her. She's completely strung out, like heroin, crack cocaine, alcohol, marijuana, like everything she can fill in there. She's stealing my tokens. So I have to walk from South Philly all the way to Chestnut Hill for high school, just very layered things. And I don't want to tell anyone, no adults, because then they'll take my brother and they'll put him in the system. I'm 15. No matter how many jobs I work, it's not like someone's going to give me a 15-year-old. A 3-year-old. So I had a moment where this was the umpteenth time that one of her male people had accosted me. And it was so out of hand that she was starting to literally offer me, like, I don't have money for this. My daughter's upstairs. You can take her. And I remember taking my brother and literally climbing. We were in a 3-floor building, a Trinity is what they call it. And I climbed up on top of the roof with my brother just to stay away. And we were there for hours and hours. I'm 15 years old. And I had a thought in that moment, I'm either going to go to jail or I'm going to die if I don't leave here. So I called my grandmother, who wasn't the best person. That was the house that I left, right? Like, this wasn't the best place either. But her husband, my step-grandfather, who was one of my abusers, had died a couple of years prior. So I said, well, it got to be better than this. Let me call and see if I can go back with my brother. And she said, you can come, but I'm not raising any babies. I'm not doing that. So, and I said, well, I'll take care of him. She said, no, you won't. It's you or nobody. That's your choice. And I really had to make that hard choice. I can leave him here, hoping and praying that he doesn't end up in the system, visit him as much as possible, literally coming after school 2-3 times, after track practice, cheerleading practice, all the things, work as much as I possibly could, and give him some tether of hope with my energy, with my presence, with taking to playground, all of that. Or I can guarantee that I will not survive this. And I made a choice to leave. I saved myself. And that was something that sat with me in the negative for so many years. I felt so guilty about leaving him, no matter how often I would go up there and spend time with him. My husband and I ended up taking custody of him when he was 13. I'm still in my 20s, right? We got married at 22. We're a fairly new couple, right? In terms of being married. Yeah. We had been together since 17, but we're, very young. We're struggling. I literally just graduated grad school that May. We took custody of him in September. So now I'm in a big court battle with my biological mother over this child that now is doing what I did. He's literally going and sitting on top of the rooftops at 11, 12, and 13 to escape the nonsense in the house. And I was like, I can't have this. And although we already had 2 children and we didn't have a lot of money, and anything about social work, you don't get paid too much more than a teacher, right? And here I am bringing in a preteen with all of the baggage that a preteen boy has gotten in that house. But that was my gift. That was me paying forward. That was me being intentionally selfish again. I couldn't keep him when we were younger, but I could at least give him a healthy home. I could give him structure. My husband could pour in some male mentorship in a healthy way with no agenda, right? And the only thing that we requested is that he be honest with us, and that if he had any negative behavioral reactions at all to our kids, like some of the abuse and some of the things that he came from, that he had to talk to us before anything happened, because that would not be tolerated. Like, I couldn't have my children come up into a cycle. That was our deal. And he was okay with it till he was about 19, and he wanted, he was in college and coming back like, I need some freedom. And we were like, okay, get your freedom, because here we still got structure, right? You're not coming in here at 4:00 in the morning at 19.
Conversation we all have at some point with parents, like, hey, you're welcome to come and go as you like. Where's your home?
Right. That part. That part. They say one king per castle, one queen per castle, all of it.
Yeah.
But honestly, that 15 was my first time. And, from there, I started making these smaller, deliberate steps towards reclaiming my time, reclaiming my space, and not just so I could take a nap, which is helpful, not just so I could get a mani-pedi, which is nice, but so I could do my forgiveness work, so I could have the space to continue to go to therapy or whatever it is that I might have needed, so that I could take a vacation by myself without anyone else. I call them self-lovecations now. I take 6 weeks every single summer. Self-lovecation. I edge in a little time for my husband because our anniversary is in the middle of that over the summer, and little time for our grandbabies. We have 2 toddler grandbabies now. But outside, the majority of that is me loving on me because I deserve it.
Okay, so my emotional roller coaster has gone from amazement to wanting to cry to feeling what it was like to be 15 in a mildly chaotic home. Nothing like what you're dealing with, right? And just thinking, oh, my heart's breaking because it's tough enough with your hormones being a girl, 15, and you're also overachieving on everything you're doing. You know, so I'm just thinking that is such a heavy load.
Yeah, it was.
It was. But, and then at the same time, marveling at the courage it took to pick you.
Yeah.
Right. Because no one benefits if we lose you.
Right.
So, okay, let me recalibrate here. Speaking of recalibration. Hoo-wee, baby. Okay. I had some questions you've already answered, but I do want to talk to you now. So with this back story, I want to ask you a personal question. Do you have the same husband you did at 20, 22?
I do. I kept him. Look at me.
Well, if he were here, I had some questions for him. He's not, so we'll pretend he is. No, I just, because sometimes we project our stuff onto others and make it like, well, blah, blah, blah. This wouldn't be so hard if X, Y, and Z. I didn't hear any of that.
I tried it. I tried it. I tried it. But I met my match, thankfully. But I definitely tried it. We went to marriage therapy and everything. Yeah. Like he was like, listen, what we're not going to do is that part.
Yeah, thanks for sharing. But let me share something back. I'm here.
Right.
We're doing this.
Right.
Oh my gosh. Okay. Well, respect to him for that. This is all about you. But I am curious, you know, you talked about how busy you were, and on paper and all of that, you were slammed, right? So I hear that a lot too. You know, people say, well, I don't have time to do A, B, and C. So how do we make space for what we want when we feel we're already at capacity?
Yeah, that's a big one, Sarah. So I have to, and you started in the earlier part of your introduction asking about work, life, and love balance. So this is my answer to both. I have a formula for it. I'm a polymath, so I have a lot of information in my head, and I typically truncate by putting things in acronyms and equations. My formula for balance, for work, life, and love balance specifically, is very simple. It's the letter T over top of, like a fraction, the letter B. It's admitting your truth. That's what the T is, for what you really want. Your needs are understood. You know, Maslow's hierarchy of needs, you know, safety, shelter, food, right? Like, it's understood. We all, as humans, we need the basics. That's understood. So that's not the focus. The focus is, what do you really want? What do you want to do in this world that would make you feel like in your obituary? Yes, she or he or they did that. What is that thing? You know, high level, what is it? And the B is the boundaries that you create so you can achieve that truth as your reality. To me, that's what balance is. It's not 50-50, 70-30. It's none of that. You could be super in what I call the burn zone, where you're on fire, you're working on a project, you're doing 8, 10, 12, 16 plus hours a day, and you feel completely imbalanced because you are in your truth, working towards whatever that reality is that you're trying to create, and you have great, empowered, and expansive boundaries. Your boundaries shouldn't make you feel like you're in a Ziploc bubble. Your boundaries shouldn't make you feel like you are mean or you're not connecting to the very people that you're doing all of this for. They should be expansive, and you should be empowered to have them. The way that you do that is you get really honest with yourself and first look at what you need to let go. Are you holding shame? If you are holding shame, I believe, very Brene Brown style, and she's a great, fantastic researcher, the vulnerability that you need to release it is your cure. Shame is because of secrets. You're holding this part back from yourself. I was in a lot of shame because of all the masks, the thickness, the layered thickness, right? All that calcification under it. if people really knew this little tiny skinny afraid girl who was abused and who was called stupid every day for breakfast. There were no affirmations in my home. That was not a thing. My family, we woke up to my step-grandfather throwing my grandmother across the wall and cursing and all of the things. Like, that was my alarm clock, legit my alarm clock for school every single day. And weekends were the worst if you didn't have somewhere that you could go. Like, it was all of that. So there was a lot of shame for me that I had to unravel with help. Couldn't do it no matter how smart I am. Can't do it by myself. I needed smarter people, people who wouldn't be charmed, people who wouldn't judge, but would just hold sacred space for me. So if you don't have that, and you may not have had as a physically or emotionally violent background as I did, but you may have your own trauma, your own micro or macro, they call it big T, little t trauma, where maybe you had great parents and you had heat and water and all the things, but your parents worked a lot to give you that. So you feel like, yeah, they were good, but they didn't listen really well. They were always working. I felt like I couldn't be heard. That is a form of trauma because your little kid brain was interpreting that busyness that your parents had to put food on the table, to keep everything, to keep you in all those activities, the tap, the jazz, the ballet, the football. Your brain as a kid took that as, they don't love me. I'm not enough. And as you grew up and you started to understand, oh no, they love me. This is how they love. You still never let go of well, I'm not enough for them. I'm not enough for him. I'm not enough for her. I'm not enough for the world. You still carry that. And it causes you to have an expectation of limited belief in yourself. So if your parents said, you be a doctor or scientist or a lawyer, that's the greatest way to make money, and you really wanted to design maracas, right? Like, and you were like, this is what I want, or, lamps or shoes or whatever. I want to be a coach. I want to be a strategist. I want to be an Enneagram specialist. Like, if you knew what that was back in the day when we were younger. But if that's what you wanted, you felt like that wasn't a worthy career because you had to prove that this is what you would do. This was the expectation of you. This is how you show up as your best self. So we stop living in our truth. We start doing this whole trajectory. Sometimes it looks like our career. Sometimes it looks like the person we choose to be our lover or the lovers that we've had along the way. The friends that we allow in that aren't good friends. They don't reciprocate anything. They don't hear us. All they do is take. But there was an expectation that this is what it was supposed to be. And it literally clouded our truth. So if you can make space for you to listen to what you really want, which is no one needs to tell you, someone can help you uncover it, but it's already in you. If you can say, you know what? I really want to design maracas. At 16 years old, I'm going to make maracas my thing, and you start chipping away at it. Take a half an hour, go visit the local shop that has I think they're officially called castanets. Go and see what the castanets are. Look at the different ones across the internet globe and see what's out there. How hard is it for you to get into it? What can you do? And then you create boundaries so you have time for that, which might only be 10 minutes to start. Then it's 20 minutes, then it's 30. But you have to create that time, as one of my colleagues called it, to be a pathfinder instead of just managing your time. Managing your time is what most of us as ambitious people can do. Like, you know how to put a lot of stuff into that little jam-packed space, right? But we don't create the time to follow the path of ourselves. But if you really want it, if you say that I want to create balance, I'm tired of this burnout, I'm tired of overwhelm, I'm tired of not having whatever it is that I want to live fully. And it has nothing, I'm not talking about money. Money's easy. Money's understood. Money comes with all the other things. And, that's a whole different part of the conversation. But just to live fully, to live what I say in that space of A and D, to have and instead of saying, well, I have to do this or choose that. I'm not this or I'm that. Like, instead of boxing yourself in there, we break boxes by admitting the truth of what we really want, not what sounds good to our best friend, not what our high school reunion will think is classy or great, not to prove our ex-lover was wrong when they said whatever they said about us that still stuck with us and hurt our heart. But what do we want without limitation. And then you kind of back into that with boundaries around you. That there's 5 specific areas, but just to like bring it in, it's really creating those boundaries in a way that allows you to have time for your spirituality, whatever that is for you, to be pulled forth, to have some energy to manage those expectations and break free of the ones that no longer serve you. And honestly, to have room for perspective. Like being with you right now, Sarah, gives me a different perspective. I never knew that there was a specific specialist for the work that you did. I thought it was a part of other things. And you're making an amazing living saying, no, I can do a lot of things. Don't get me wrong. I got some brilliance in here. I can stretch out, but I'm really good at this. And I really like this. And I want to call people in. I professionally stalked you on your website. I saw you, girl. I see what you're doing. And you were calling people in.
Checked
like
you out too.
That's right. That's what we do, right? Professional stalkers. But I really appreciate it. And I learned so much that having a wider perspective, being outside of your bubble, allows you to really have space for your truth too, because you can see the complement as well as the differences without feeling like you need to compete or be tied to, well, if I'm not doing it this way, then I'm not doing it well, right?
That's a tough one initially, because our mind gets so quick and fast about talking over what our heart says. Yeah. I mean, it's like, then when you say, you can hear the mind going, blah, 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 blah. And to be able to step and separate those two and go, okay, I just want to hear my heart right now. Yes. I'll get back to you in a minute, because I know my mind's not going anywhere. It's always ready to tell me its opinion. Mm-hmm. It is. And so, and it's not, because it's habitual, I can trust that it won't forget the last thing it wanted me to be aware of. It'll be, I might forget where I put something, that kind of thing, but not the importance it thinks I should hustle on something. And Naketa, I think it was like September of this past year of 2022. I was just like, everybody was wanting this and wanting that. And I thought, I wonder what would happen if I did nothing. Right. Like it was, because it's that whole thing. Like, if I slow down, will all of this just evaporate? Right.
Right.
And I thought, well, my husband's told me for years, it's not a true statement, but I like the theory of it. He says, you don't have to do what you're doing. We'll be fine. Right. We'll be fine. But it also comes with a lot of huge adjustments that I have to honestly say, I'm not sure I want those.
Right. It's not your truth.
It's not my truth. But I appreciate that the door is there, that I'm not locked into something. And so I thought, okay, let's just see what happens. Let's just see what happens if I don't stress. And I just wait and see who else steps up. Right. The amazing thing is, it wasn't like 5 minutes and say, hey, can I take that on for you? Let me do this. I'm going, oh my God, what little story have I been living in here that I had to make it so hard, right?
Come on.
I think I was, like, to myself. So it's been a lot lighter since then, because I keep asking that question.
It's powerful. And I can't help but smile and think about how much spaciousness you made for yourself from a metaphysics perspective when you got out of the way, when your ego got out of the way and allowed you to be in the collective consciousness. So other people who are already there, who are already on your wavelength, that have been trying to get to you, the energy of them was trying to get to you, new clients, new partners, new referral partners, new subject matter experts to add to what you're doing. Good humans, like they were trying to get to you, but your way of being full, I won't say busy.
No, being full, busy,
right.
Whatever. I've tried to stop saying busy when people say, how are you? I try to say never. I never say busy. I say, I'm doing well. I'm physically well. What are you really wanting to know from me? I'm physically well. Thank you for asking.
I like your reframe of that. You're like, I'm just going to answer this the way you probably can handle it. And then based on our relationship, I may open up more. And talk about how productive my day is.
The spaciousness, the spiritual spaciousness, because that's exactly what's happened. People have shown up all of a sudden like, hey, could you guys do this? And thinking, wow, that was so much easier than having to worry or figure it out.
Come on. No chasing. No chasing in 2023. No chasing.
Let those little rabbits run free in the year of the rabbit.
Just funny. That's my nickname is Bunny. So how hilarious is that?
Cute nickname. Okay, another story. Sarah, get back on the track here. Okay, so I love the mathematical formula, T over B, boundaries. Okay, so as we get closer to the end of this, I'm not going to promise you this is my last question, but talk to me a little bit about the Institute, who you typically work with, and the roles that boundaries have in that work.
Ooh, they're so significant. It's ridiculous in a good way, and the best way possible. So our company has evolved since it started in 2012. When we started, we were a staffing agency with a professional development arm. And we kind of grew into like holistic growth and development. So we did personal, professional, and leadership development with some tenets of business strategy because of all the entrepreneurial lessons that I had learned. That was me feeling myself, quite frankly, like, oh, all these people love it. Like, great. Oh, yeah, we could do this and we could do this and we could do this. And before I knew it, I was in my default of people pleasing, right? Which pulls you quickly into addiction of stress, which was my personal, not projecting that on anyone else, my personal addiction. I never was into drugs or promiscuous behavior or any of that, or alcohol. It was fill up my plate so I could hide. And we tried that for a while, and that did not feel good. That felt really yucky. I felt like I created a job for myself instead of being able to be in flow. Because when I left being a traditional clinician, I don't serve as a clinician anymore, even though I maintain all my licenses and I fold all of my tools inside what I do as a balance and relationship advisor. Being a clinician, I loved it, but I wasn't in love with it. And I found myself creating another relationship, if you will, with the work where I was like, I'm good at it. I'm not even sure I love it. I think I just like it a whole lot. And the like is because you're there and I don't want to disappoint you. You know what I mean? Like if you ever dated someone, you're like, oh, you're really good, but there's no spark. I don't know what's happening.
I totally get what you're saying. Absolutely.
You know what I mean?
I do. It's like, just because you're good or you are good with that person doesn't mean that's where you ought to be.
Exactly. And, that's hard because, like I know as an entrepreneur, you don't work, you don't eat. And whichever way that looks for you, from funnels and, all the stuff to one-to-one work, whatever your modality and your systems are. And I just didn't like it. So I had to get really honest with myself. Like, who do I like to play with? That's the question that I started to ask. Who do I want to play with? And as you and I were talking in the green room, I'm an Enneagram 7. I'm very enthusiastic and I like freedom and I like play. And I don't like to be anchored to anything that I didn't create. And even the things I create, I still want the freedom within it. Right.
Yes.
And I also know that I'm an activator. Like I love to activate people into their next, whatever it is that they're doing. So I looked at who I wanted to play with and how I wanted to play with them. So I love to play with power couples and potent humans is what we call them. Power couples for us are not what most people think. I know for the generation of my kids, 26 and under, power couple has a little bit of a stigma because they think, oh, you just have to have a lot of money and they're snooty and snobby and they're always in a suit and they walk in a room and dominate. Like, no, power couples should have some money, right? Because if they're doing great work, they should be able to pay for their lifestyle, whatever that looks like. But for us, it's about their philanthropy. Are they philanthropic? Are they influential in whatever industry? They could be the people who make the little muffs on the microphone that you've never seen or heard. They don't have to have ever been on camera, but are they influential in their respective industries? And last but not least, are they advocates for disproportionately affected people by systemic issues? If they don't hit all three of those, you are not my person. Doesn't mean I won't have a virtual tea conversation with you to see how I can support you, push a check across the table and put you in touch with someone great in my network. But you are not who I want to play with, because then I'm doing it because I can, not because I want to. So that was one way for me to establish boundaries as the key person who delivers the services in here. My husband and I work together. He's a shareholder in the company, but he doesn't do this work. He's not trained for this work. He's a creative, right? In a different way. than I am. For the potent humans, I really love ambitious women in business and a few brave men. But the people that I really get into the most for potent humans are when, regardless of their gender, if they are entrepreneurs or entrepreneurial in their thinking, so they can work in big conglomerates, but they have like micro businesses within that. Like, I think they call them entrepreneurs now inside the company with the way that they manage. But they have to be visionary, the architects and catalysts of something that they're doing, because that thinking, what I call careerpreneur thinking, those analytical creatives, to be very specific, those are so yummy. Like, those are my people. I light up when I'm like, you're analytical and creative. Like, I get so excited, especially when they are ready and willing to do the work, because the work that I do is deep. We have fun with their couples and the individuals. We help them improve their intimacy in every way, from more orgasms, right? And understanding their body from my sexology hat all the way through the deeper parts of trauma that they're healing. Emotional healing is a huge part of what I do, but I don't want people to come to me if they're knocking on the door of divorce. I'm going to refer you. Period. Like, I could do it. I don't want to do it. I want you to say, I have a really good marriage. And in parentheses, we want to be blissful. We want to turn up. We want to amplify something. Of course, we're human. Nothing's perfect. There's always a few little things that we can uncover. Like, oh, there's some communication things here, and that's fine. But if you're like, Naketa, if you don't help us, I don't know what we're going to do. Let me connect you to someone else, because that means I'm sucked back into people pleasing to help you do something that, yes, I can do, but I'm not interested. And then if we're working with a couple and we've amplified and we've turned up and we've done all the things, or an individual woman, she's excited and then life hits because storms happen to all of us. Oh, that's yummy to me too, because we already have rapport. We've already established I love my clients. I call them client partners. Like, I love my people. I'm totally good with that. But if I met you in that toxicity, that's not necessarily my favorite place to start our relationship. Because, the way you start something is the way you end it across the board, right?
Okay, that's a powerful statement right there. The way you start, it's the way you end it. Mm-hmm. And that's something that could be easily overlooked, but it's too true. It's one of those truisms.
Yeah.
So if you go in with a certain mindset, you'll probably end with that mindset without change and work. And I just love how clear you are. In my head, those are my filters. Like, you've passed this one gate, then this gate, right? And if it doesn't make the first threshold, there's nothing wrong with you or me. We're just not the match.
That's right.
But I do know other people who'd be a better match.
1,000%. The way I'm very visual, and the way you described it, you made me think of, I have this whiteboard. I'll send it to you. It's really about the healthy estate in your relationships. And there's 5 boundaries, like the 5 permission zones of boundary we talked about, because it's T8B5 to be very specific about the balance formula. But I just say T over B to keep it simple. And in this, kind of octagon shape, I have a boundary literally listed at every entry point into your estate. They're like guards around you. And I think you can apply it to everything that you do, including the work that you're charged with doing on this earth while you have time here. And if I don't have boundaries here, anyone and everyone can come in and get past my guards. My guards are there to allow me to be expansive and to be successful and to be great, quite frankly. But they're also there to make sure that I don't default into other ways of being, because that's my true comfort zone. My true core is the greater version that I am now. But my comfort zone is in the trauma. Like that, I was in that. It's so familiar. It's like second skin.
We know how to navigate that kind of stuff.
Absolutely. Right? And as women who compartmentalize, I mean, come on, if there was a platinum Olympic champion medal that we could get for that, most women in at least America would have that because we just stuff it down. I don't have time to be angry. Tears and all while I'm changing the baby diaper, tears and all while I'm having sex, tears and all while I'm doing the 5,000 things I have to do because I don't have time to actually process any of this.
Yeah.
And when you do, it's usually because you're stretched out on the bathroom floor and you can't get up.
Yeah, that's a little too far over the edge for an easy comeback.
Absolutely.
A little bit too far. Oh, mercy, girl. I feel so full and so grateful. Honestly, I do. So I'm just like, okay, I got to remember, not pretend, but I have to remember this will be a podcast. And should put a warning on the beginning. Hey, grab something to drink now because we're getting into this stuff.
Yeah, we both bought something hot. Mine's is probably cold now, but I remember we both bought something.
Mine's almost gone in my hot water. It's so good. It's so funny because the more I'm connected to me, the more I really like water. It's so interesting little shift, water and hot water. Even in the summer, I prefer warm. But
same.
It's just, oh no, don't make me cold. Okay, so Naketa, what would you recommend? Well, if your daughter, let's go to your kid. Let's go to your real people, not imaginary people. So she's 22. Okay. So she comes to you and she has this little conundrum. Does she know and live your kind of balance strategy?
No, yes. Live? Absolutely not. She thinks her parents are not nearly as smart as she is. Are you kidding me?
That's because she's not 25 or 26 yet. Right. When the light dawns, when you're going, oh, maybe they did know what they were talking about.
Yeah, that part. We're still waiting for that aha to hit.
Well, if she were to come to you and ask you a question, or you were going to share with her, not tell her necessarily, but share with her a piece of your wisdom that would make sure she stays in her brilliance, what might that piece be?
That's powerful because she does work for our company. So I share a lot, probably against her will because of the work she does. But what would I tell Messiah for her to stay in her brilliance? Honestly, I think the best gift that I could give her is I would help her know that boundaries are here to help you expand, not to keep you small. I think that's what I would say.
Yep. It's so counterintuitive and so powerful. So powerful. Okay. We're turning a corner here. 2 things so far. Where do you like people to reach out to you? What's the best way?
Yeah, the best way is honestly, I love for us to have virtual tea so they can connect with me on our website, which is thigpro.com, thigpro.com. I would say second to that, because, some people, this was a lot of information and a lot of sharing, but sometimes people want to go down the rabbit hole. Go check out the Balance Boldly podcast. It's everywhere.
We'll make sure that, I don't have that link, so I'll make sure that's in my notes so that it gets in the show notes. That makes it super simple for folks.
Yeah.
And I know you've offered to give folks a download from your site. Would you share a little bit about what that is?
Yeah, well, here you get to choose because there's 2 things that I couldn't pick. Would you like something for your couples or would you like something for the individual potent humans who are listening?
Oh, that's a tough one. I'll go for the individuals and then they can team up and come to you for the rest.
Okay. So for individuals, I would say the best gift I could give you is an honest and transparent look, even more than what we've done today, of who I am, how I got here, and how I still rise, to be very Maya Angelou about it. And that is to go to aselfishbook.com and get a free PDF copy of Selfish, Permission to Pause, Live, Love, and Laugh Your Way to Joy.
That is super generous. And then the last thing I want to ask before I wrap this up is, what should I have asked you that I did not ask you?
Oh, Sarah, that is a fantastic question. What should you have asked me? Ooh, You had so many powerful questions.
Well, what's on your heart today that you just wanted to share that maybe we never got to?
Honestly, I came to just engage with you and be magical, which I think we did together, to be truly honest. I think the only thing that I would add, because it's top of mind normally, not today, because, today was technically a relaxed day, is we have the Intentionally Selfish Incubator. It's the Suite, Intentionally Selfish Suite. It's a personal development incubator where you work on yourself first and you get certified to be a certified selfish coach or architect, depending on which tier you're in. I think that's the only thing we didn't talk about.
Okay. So now that's something for folks to go to your website and check out.
Yep. That's all there.
Naketa, I cannot thank you enough. I feel extremely full and grateful, not just full up, but grateful. Because I don't really believe in coincidence.
Same.
So I'm figuring our paths crossed for something. And I know, listeners, that you are listening to this. And if you got something out of it personally, and how could you not? I mean, the wisdom that Naketa shared, there's many nuggets in there. But if you know someone else who did not listen to this, please share the podcast. Honestly, 5 years ago, that was my impetus for starting the podcast, because we all have too many labels or limits put on us. And we want to bust through those so that we can actually be fully who we are, because we're all really brilliant and need to be here and live into that brilliance. And we can't do it with lies around us. So share this, reach out to Naketa, check out her website, get the PDF download of the book. And until next week, I wish you all the very best.
You've been listening to the No Labels, No Limits podcast with best-selling author, change agent, and strategic vision coach, Sarah Box. You can grab the show notes and find out how to work with Sarah at sarahbox.com/No Labels, No Limits podcast. We'd love this podcast to reach as many people as possible. So please remember to rate, leave a 5-star review, and share the podcast with someone you think would get value from this conversation. Until next time, keep taking those daily action steps to align your purpose to your principles and achieve your goals in business and life.